Hi everyone, so I just thought I'd create a quick little video for those of you who didn't get to my chat last week around what's required of you for the assessment as part of Module 3. So what we're looking at doing is designing an online learning activity with technology. This assessment comes in two parts. There's a part A and a part B. I need you to have completed part A and handed that in so I can give you some feedback and evaluate that before you complete part B, because it may be that there are some changes that need to be made for you to be able to complete part B. Okay, so part A is asking you to review educational technologies and their affordances. So I'm asking you to look at 5 technologies, 3 of which need to be CSU supported. 2 of them don't have to be. They can be, all 5 can be if you want, but at a minimum 3 of them need to be CSU supported, because at the end of the day these are the technologies you really should be using, because they've already gone through a fairly rigorous process around looking at their pedagogical relevance, whether they're, the affordances support our students, and of course whether, the security kind of meets our student needs as well. So if you click on this link, or in fact there are some links within the modules as well around the different learning technologies that we have at CSU, so we can take you to the learning technologies page, and so you can have a bit of a look here at an overview of the CSU learning technologies. This technologies landscape PDF is really great because it looks at all the different technologies that we have from a student need point of view. So what is it that you need to embed in your subject or in an activity or a resource? Do your students need opportunities for communication and collaboration? Because if that's the case, here are all these different tools that you can use to embed some further collaboration for your students in whether it's assessment, whether it's your content, whether it's an activity, or do they need some help meeting assessment, in which case here's a whole heap of tools that we have as well that you can use and embed to support students with their assessment. So this, the learning technologies landscape is a really great PDF to start thinking about what kind of technologies meet needs. There is also as well, just back on this page, learning technologies in an alphabetical here, so you can go through and have a look, Adobe Captivate, what is that? Okay, Adobe Connect, what is that? And have a bit of a look at what CSU has here, the types of affordances that they have, and then maybe you could follow up with those a little bit more as well. So there is a list, quite a few lists there of what kind of technologies CSU has. I would suggest as well, think small. You don't need to think big. Go into Interact 2. Everyone has to use Interact 2. It's where, the subject sites are kept, so it's where all your resources and content and things should be in anyway. You don't need to just look at Interact 2. Interact 2 has a heap of tools embedded into it. So they have discussion forums, they have journals, they have blogs, wikis, you can do tests, surveys, multiple choice quests, you can do announcements, any of that sort of stuff. So you can actually do use those individual tools as part of this assessment. You don't just have to look at Interact 2 as one big technology there. Feel free to break it down a little bit more, because in fact, you have to use Interact 2. So having an overview of some of the extra tools within Interact 2 is probably a good way of getting an understanding of what all those different tools do and how they can support your students within the subject site itself. So as an overview of those 5 technologies, I just want bullet points in a table. Do not make this difficult for yourself. So one area would be an overview of the technology that includes these sorts of things, its function, the features, whether it integrates with the CSU systems, things like that. The affordances of the technology, so how it can support your students. This one's important. When we say suitability for your cohort and context, I want you to think about your students. So not just, yes, this is suitable for students, but yes, this is this is suitable for my students because. And then I want you to kind of match it with some of the elements of the online learning model that it most suited. You don't have to have all of them. You can just pick one element that you think it's most suited to, or you can list a couple of the elements that you think it meets. So that's fine. So yeah, just dot points in a table. Don't overthink that part too much. It is just a bit of an overview, a bit of an analysis of sort of some of the technologies, just so you get to kind of experience what it's like to really get an understanding of the breadth of technologies that are out there. And then part B on that, pick one of those technologies that you've said is suitable for your context, and in no more than 500 words. So again, no need to go overboard here. Just justify the selection of that technologies in terms of who your students are. So I just really want you to kind of look at one of them that you've said is suitable, pick it out and sort of say, yes, this technology is suitable for my cohort because of X, Y, and Z. That's all. I just want you to flesh out that thinking a little bit more as part of this. So again, in no more than 500 words. If you can meet the criteria in 350 words, absolutely. But again, it's thinking about it in terms of the needs of your students. So, you know, these are who my students are, this is what their learning needs are, and so because of that, this particular technology would be great. It can be as simple as that. Now, this is really important. I want you to hand in part A at least a week before you do part B, because I want to be able to mark it and give you some feedback, because some of what you do in this 500 words in part A should inform some of your thinking for part B. So yeah, get onto that first. Don't start doing the part A and part B in conjunction with each other. I want you to focus on part A as an analysis of the technologies that are out there before you start thinking about part B. And if you can get it to me and I can turn it around and get the feedback back to you within 2 days, then fine. I'm happy for you to get part B in earlier than a week later. I want to have seen part A and have had an opportunity to give you feedback. So part B is then designing an online learning activity with technology. So you can pick the same technology and flesh it out a bit further, or you can pick a different technology that you also think is suitable for your cohort. I don't mind which way you go. But again, in no more than 1,000 words, I want you to propose the design of an online learning activity using a CSU supported technologies or another technology that can be integrated into CSU systems. So there's no point choosing a technology that ultimately students can't use. We want to try and make this an authentic experience for you. So definitely think about a technology that that students can actually access through the subject site. And what I'm asking you to do is consider a learning need of your students that this activity can meet. So, the reason that we include activities, resources, content is because it meets the learning needs of students and it helps them to meet assessment and subject outcomes. So I don't want you to sort of think, oh, I really like the look of this, and so I was thinking of doing an activity around that. We don't make our students do pointless work for no reason. What we do is identify a need that they have, and then we develop activities and resources to support them to meet that need. So again, there's sort of 4 parts to this. So the first bit is around the context for the learning activity. So this is where, as I said, I want you to identify who your student cohort is and what their learning needs are. So I think for a lot of you, your student cohort is potentially going to be online students in the ADPP. They're potentially going to be widely dispersed across Australia, so they're going to be geographically dislocated from each other. A range of ages, some of them may be straight out of high school and others might be looking at, a secondary career in the police. And then start thinking about what the learning needs of those students might be. So for some of the older students, it may be that they don't have great digital literacy skills and they're about to undertake an online course. So how are you going to support them to be able to study effectively in that space and use the technologies that you implement if they, don't have great digital literacy skills? So that's what I'm saying when I sort of say identify who your cohort are and then identify their learning needs. And again, so learning needs of online students are going to be around giving them spaces to collaborate with each other, giving them spaces to communicate with each other, giving them spaces to, have opportunities for peer review to learn from each other as well. The next bit is around the justification of the learning technology. So again, you've identified your students and you've identified the learning needs of those students. So the justification of the technology is then, well, this technology is going to support those learning needs, and that's why I've picked it. So that's really basically the affordances of the technology, is the fact that what is it that the technology does that can support your students' learning needs. And again, it's in relation to the specific learning activity that you're looking at. So the third dot point then is around methods for evaluating the effectiveness of the activity. So we're asking you to propose 3 evaluation methods. Now, you don't have to actually have evaluated the activity. You may not have even gotten to a point where you've implemented it yet. We're just asking you to start and think about how you're going to evaluate an activity, because every time, in fact, you develop and implement a new activity or a resource or something, you should always do some kind of an evaluation to check whether or not it is useful, valuable, and meets student needs. One of those evaluations needs to be around the SES, which is the Student Evaluation Survey that all students get at the end of session. And again, there are links to find that in the module. So there's a bank of questions in the SES, and I want you to look at those and see if any of those relate to, would be a good question to relate back to this activity. The other option, of course, is the SES does actually give you an opportunity to customize it. So you could create your own question that really explicitly asked about a particular activity. So we've kind of given you one of the evaluation methods. It's going to be the SES, and I then want you to go and have a look at the question bank and identify which question is going to help there. And so then you've just got to think about 2 other ways that you might evaluate the activity. And again, it can be as simple as, if an activity directly relates to assessment, did students do well in the assessment, which is probably a great indication that that particular activity helped them to do that. So, they don't have to be in-depth kind of long-term qualitative, evaluation methods. And then sort of the final one is about reflection. Not a lot of people do this well, so I do want you to think about how you do this. What I want you to do, again, is start and consider what you learn as you developed this activity, what you learn about your students, what challenges you came across as you were trying to develop it, and therefore what might you do differently next time you implement this. So did you come up against any barriers? Did you come up against any challenges? If you're implementing an activity that includes a lot of video, are your students who might be really rurally based, will they have the data to be able to watch that? Again, if you've got older students that are maybe a bit challenged in terms of their digital literacy, will they be able to effectively participate in particular activities if it requires, in fact, a high level of digital literacy to be able to do that? So just thinking about some of the challenges that you might have come up against, how you then went about trying to mitigate those. What I encourage you to do for both of these, I have the marking criteria here. So for part A, this is your marking criteria, and this is how you meet the satisfactory standard for that. So please make sure you come down here and continually refer back to this. Have I given an overview of 5 technologies, including affordances? Have I explicitly stated whether or not it's suitable for my cohort? And have I identified elements of the online learning model? And then for the last bit, have I then justified the selection of that educational technology with references to its affordances to support my student learning? Have I included this pedagogical literature and how they relate to my specific student cohort? Again, for part B, the 4 criteria. So it's around your learning context. So give me an overview of who your students are and what their learning needs are. Then it's a justification for the technology based on what your students' learning needs are. then it's evaluation methods, and then it's reflection. I don't mind if it would make you, if it would make it easier if you go in and put these headings there. If you want to put learning context, justification for the technology, evaluation methods, and reflection, I don't mind. Leave it in. If that will help you think and plan better, that's fine. Part B is a maximum of 1,000 words. You have 4 criteria here. Realistically, you're looking at 250 words per criteria. You know, don't spend 500 words giving me the needs of your students and then only 100 words for each of these other ones. Because that probably means that there's no way in the world you'd be able to meet this satisfactory level. So, you know, really think about how you're going to plan that out. Be succinct. Just tell me what I need to know in order for you to meet this satisfactory requirements. Okay? And ensure, of course, you are being asked for relevant pedagogical literature. So Part B needs to be referenced and referenced correctly. I'm not so worried about Part A, especially in the dot points. If you do reference literature in Part A, you will need to cite it correctly. But 100% for Part B, you need to have references as part of this. And there's information, again, about how you reference correctly. CSU uses APA 6. And there are guides and lots of information on how you can do that. So look, I hope that has been helpful. I'll stop talking now because that's quite a long video anyway. But if you do have any questions or you're not 100% sure, you know, please just get in touch with me. So if you find that, you know, if I find that you actually haven't met the satisfactory standard for any of these elements, what I will do is give you feedback and send it back to you to have another go. So we're not here to fail people. We are here to make sure that you meet the satisfactory standard for the criteria. But of course, you know, the more you do in the first part, the less I'll have to kind of send back to you. But yeah, look, I hope that was helpful, and please get in touch with me if you do have any questions. Good luck. Bye.